Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous, hosted by Bruce Hutchin. I'm so happy you've joined us today, and you're going to find out a lot about whitetail hunting on the show. This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 370. Hey, folks, we got a new sponsor. It's called Buckwild Coffee. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people go to Starbucks every day and drink coffee. Well, why shouldn't Buckwild Coffee offer you light, medium, or dark roast with free shipping? All you have to do is go to whitetailrendezvous.com, go to shop, and order your coffee, and I'll ship it out for free. Hey, thanks so much for visiting Buckwild Coffee. The best brew in the West, the best brew around the campfire, the best brew in the hunting shack, the best brew anywhere. Buckwild Coffee. Get yours today. 8. Today we're welcoming Rance Thomas of Creative Land and Wildlife Solutions, plus a little bit of Nashville thrown in there, plus a little bit of nutrition for deer during drought, plus a little bit about how he can take a look at your property from the air, yes, on Google Earth, and give you some hints. He's got a really sweet story about he'd never been on the land before. He and his buddy said they're going to hunt this piece. He gets out his iPhone, he maps it up, and guess what? He shoots a shooter buck of 125 plus whitetail the same day without ever being on that land. So the guy knows whitetails. He knows all about giving back. So, Rance, welcome to the show. It's never too early to think about food plots. Whitetail Rendezvous has an ebook for you. Just simply text 33444 food plot to get your copy. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is Bruce Hutchin, your host, and we're heading down to Athens, Georgia. I'm going to connect with Rance Thomas, Creative Land and Wildlife Solutions. Rance, welcome to the show.
Bruce, thanks for having me, and thanks to LinkedIn for us connecting.
Yeah, and LinkedIn's an interesting social media platform, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about a lot of things that I recently found out about you, and we're going to talk about one part of that, your songwriting, at the end of the show. But let's just jump right into your ultimate goal in what you do at Creative Land and Wildlife Solutions is to have happy customers. How do you get them to be happy customers?
That's right, Bruce. I've been blessed in my career. I started very early in a very young age, knowing that I wanted a career around hunting and hunting land. I met the right people along the way, had great opportunities come my way, and it's landed me here at a relatively young age with my own consulting business, hunting land and wildlife consulting business. Well, whitetails drive our industry. We know that. A lot of my clients are whitetail enthusiasts. Many cross over the lines of upland game birds and waterfowl and all those sort of things. And thankfully, for my background, I'm able to achieve a lot of those crossover projects. But obviously, with your show, we're here to talk about whitetails. My clients, very large demographic of different types of folks. Brand new to hunting, had the good fortune of having the resources to acquire a hunting property, a private hunting property, but don't really know what or where to go with it. They've seen hunting TV, they've read magazine articles, and a lot of times their goals are a little bit blown up, and you sometimes have to rein them in as to what is realistic for that property in that region. I've worked in well over 20 different states. I've hunted in so many states across the country. Just, again, very blessed in where I'm at today with Creative Land and Wildlife Solutions. So my clients find me because I have been out there doing this for so long. It's very much more organic than through marketing. I have friends calling friends and clients calling clients and telling them to call this guy. They need help. For example, I'm working on currently right now on my desk are 3 different properties. 2 in Georgia, 1 in Arkansas. 2 are under high fence, and that is a little bit of a naughty word sometimes with certain people in whitetail hunting. Not for me. These are native deer under a very large high fence property, and it's a different management technique than with free ranging deer. Others are free ranging herds on your average, let's say average, privately owned hunting property. They vary in size from anything from, I worked with one not long ago that was 40 acres. It's close to home, and the guy needed some help. And so we went down and worked with him up to 10,000. I think the largest single-owned property that I've worked with over my career in consulting of over 10 years is 40,000 acres. So what makes my clients happy is first being educated in what they need to know, learning how to do it effectively and efficiently, cost effectively, being a big part of my business. I try to tell folks that, look, you do pay for my service, but what you get in return is not wasting a lot of money doing the wrong things with the wrong products at the wrong time of year and wasting a lot of time trying to figure all this out on your own. And that cost savings can be quite significant. The ultimate happy client is the one who texts me or emails me that picture of them with a trophy buck or high quality buck for that particular property. And they are very thankful for the expertise that I was able to provide in the roadmap and the plan to manage the property to achieve that.
When you think about that, Creative Land and Wildlife Solutions, to have a good deer herd, you have to do a lot of things right. One, first of all, you got to have good genes in your deer, but then with the land and the way you manage the land, I'm not talking about the deer and I'm not talking about feeding them, but the way you do control burns, or you do hinge cutting, or you do, if you got a climax forest, you got to take out some of those big trees, and so we can get the good forbs and forage to grow, naturally. So how long does it take to put a good workable plan in? Question one. And second, when can a guy look for results? Results being, Pope and Young 125s, Boone and Crockett 150s and above. Sure.
Let me give you a case study to answer that as far as the best case scenario. I work with a 900-acre property here in central Georgia, sandy, poor soils, no ag, old industrial pine plantation timber that had been over-thinned for what he wanted, which was big game, high quality whitetails and turkey. And when I met the individual, he had already worked with someone in my business and really just had not gotten anywhere. And so we met actually through my great friends at QDMA. I came in and this gentleman had the resources, and he wanted the best hunting that he could get, and he didn't want to wait a really long time to get there. So we turned the burner on. He was due for a timber thin in a couple of different other areas of the property. We used that to go in and clear cut and stump and put in some large forage food plots in the center of the property. We added relatively 30 acres or more in 4 to 5 different large food plots in the center of the property. And we went into the system of food plot management that I really can achieve results with, which is high protein summer forage, soybeans, iron and clay, cowpeas, lab, et cetera, with winter carbohydrates being wheat and corn. We did start a supplemental feeding program to, quote unquote, supplement that food plot program. And that's a whole nother topic for another day. But we started herd management. We started prescribed burning program. All of those things, as you mentioned, top to bottom. And if you do all those things from top to bottom at the right level for each, you can achieve pretty big results pretty quickly. At the time that I met this individual, he had, I think on trail camera, maybe 3 bucks that were 3.5 years old, almost 4.5, and they were in the 120s. That was maybe great for some folks. For this individual, it wasn't, and he wanted to push that much further, and we did. And in a matter of literally 2 years, 2 growing seasons, we had a number of 130s, a couple of 140s, and one 150 on the property. So it's, of course, gone much further since. He's been managing according to the plans and guidelines that we laid out for 3 or 4 more years since I worked with him, and things are still running really great. So it really depends on how quickly you can move a program forward. and the resources that it are required to do that. And in a lot of cases, like with this individual, the cutting of the timber, the strategy behind that timber paid for the installation of the food plot. So we actually offset costs through the management strategy based on timber, food plots, habitat, and the end result. So your average, though, is not going to happen that fast. For my clients that are not as well resourced, maybe don't have as large a property, we would go with not a soft approach, but a more reasonable approach. We would focus on habitat. We would focus on herd management, passing the younger bucks and getting them to a mature age, trying to balance the sex ratio, adjusting herd density to where it needs to be for the property. Possibly a little bit of supplemental feeding when and where it's needed, enhancing the food plot program as much as possible, where maybe the goal there is more just to attract deer to a certain area and increase encounter and harvest opportunity. And in those cases, you can see a pretty significant turnaround in 3 to 5 years. And that's basically what I shoot for with your run-of-the-mill average client with average property and average resources. I think if they follow the right steps and they're educated properly and we're smart about it, you can see some pretty big turnaround in just 3 years, 3 to 5.
So 3 to 5 years. How do you measure the deer density on a piece of property?
I have, because of my background in working with so many different properties across the U.S., I really tried to count them all the other day, and I gave up. I've been around deer herds. I've been on properties where the deer density was either known through census study or it was estimated, and we looked at all of the different indicators: pressure on food plots, track count, pressure on native habitat, deer sighting during the middle of the day. That's a real easy one, and it works. If you're riding your property in the middle of the day from 10 to 2, and you're seeing deer in food plots or crossing roads or in the woods, you've got deer. It's not hard to say you've got too many or too few, but you've got plenty of deer. I've been on properties where we ride all day, don't see a deer. And the indicators like track counts and browse pressure on plots and native habitat also coincide with that observation. That is the first way, as I use my, experience and professional opinion to determine what the deer density is, what even buck age structure is, and sex ratio. Then we move into the next level, which is trail camera survey, observational data, and harvest data. That requires getting through a trail camera season, through a harvest season, and looking at that data. I'm right now crunching numbers on harvest data of 150 deer from an Arkansas property. That takes a lot of time, but the return can really narrow down what we are trying to determine and what a lot of us just guess at. You can go into a property and make the wrong assumptions and shoot too many does, or maybe not even not shoot enough bucks in some cases, or shoot the wrong buck. And so we want to really drill down and get a very accurate picture through trail camera survey and through harvest data and other more accurate indicators than just observation and estimation. But I will say that my observation and estimation have often coincided with the more accurate indicators.
Rand, you've been at this a long time, and I'm just thinking, you don't have much snow down in Athens, Georgia, but I know up in the country in Wisconsin where I hunt, we can gauge the animals by the winter and where they're coming to feed, and combined with our trail cameras, we can have a really good sense of what's on the farm. The issue we have is across, literally from the alfalfa field, we have a road, then we have a sanctuary that's around the lake. So there's very nice homes around this lake, and that's where the deer, for the most part, live, and they only come over, to eat supper. And it's very interesting because it's not a natural setup. How would you counsel us or consult us how we can really find out how many deer, because obviously the lake's, way over 1,000 acres of land circling around this lake, and so the deer can go east, west, north, south, and it's all agricultural land, it's all farms. So that kind of messes us up, in my thought. Your thoughts on that?
What total acreage of land are you managing that's yours and your deer
acres.
or under your
We
control?
get 1,000 acres, about 400 woodlot and non-tillable. All the rest is tillable.
Okay, so you have a pretty big farming presence there, depending on what the farmers are doing, what you're doing, food plots, the crop rotation, etc. You've got a land base that a single deer might live most of its entire time on your property with never leaving, but a majority of your deer are sharing your property and other properties around you. And that's the other thing I would also, when I first meet with a client, there's a few basic first questions. One is, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Two is, what kind of resources do we have here? I'm not asking you to send me your tax returns from last year or anything like that. I just, are we tight and scraping by here to do things, or are we more liberal with what we can spend? But the other is, what are the surrounding landowners doing that you know of? What are you aware of? What is the normal hunting strategies of deer hunters in that region? Because you can go into 1,000 acres and do everything right and spend a whole lot of money, and because of bad elements around you, get very little return. And that's when some of my clients, turn to high fence where they can and where it's legal and what the state is legal. It becomes a tool to protect their herd and their investment in that herd. But to answer your question, Bruce, it's really tough for me, based on just what we briefly said here, to give you an honest answer. All I will tell you is that a trail camera survey, and I'm sure you've talked about it with other guests, QDMA writes a lot of articles. They have a lot of resources around trail camera survey, the method that came out, a decade ago, and that I've been using for more than a decade, is a more precise method of putting trail cameras out on your property at a certain density in the right locations, putting an attractant, a bait, whatever is legal in your particular state, to draw deer in front of that camera, and then we're counting deer. And we're what we call uniquing our bucks. We're identifying a buck, finding that buck again and again and again throughout all of the photos, and creating a folder, a profile of that buck. So at the end of the day, we could talk again, another long topic for another day, but we do a statistical analysis on all this data, and you can come back with a really pretty accurate picture of not only your herd, but the regional herd if you're on a smaller property and you're sharing deer with others. That's really, in my opinion, in most states, most parts of the U.S., the only real accurate way to know for sure what you're working with for that season. And then you have to make some estimations. You know what you're going to harvest, so you can take those out of that herd model. You can estimate what your surrounding landowners are harvesting. And natural mortality, there's an estimation formula for that. And we can kind of track that herd from there through time. And if we know our recruitment rate, how many fawns are coming back into the herd, which we can determine also through trail camera survey, then I add those deer to my herd the next year, and I take away the ones that are gone, and I adjust the age structure, and off you go. Again, the others, though, are just those observational indicators. If you've got that kind of farming on your property, and I'm maybe I didn't hear you right, or I'm estimating a few things here, but if you've got pretty significant farming, your food plots aren't just a handful of half-acre hunting plots or bow plots, and your deer are just really pounding your plots. And I'm not talking about just in the summer, but in the fall and winter. You can use browse cages to determine this and look around, feeders or salt licks and that sort of thing. Your density, again, it's probably pretty high, maybe too high. But again, those are kind of broad estimations that we can make through observation.
Yeah, everybody agrees it's too high because of the sanctuary that we have, literally right across the street, where they tried a couple of archery hunts and it didn't go well. And, so they're dispersing a large herd of deer and keeping deer in the area, but it's just tough to grow them and to manage them. The first big deer we took was Garrett took one last September, second day of the archery season. He'd been watching it all summer. The deer had him perfectly patterned, went underneath the stand. He drilled it. It was a 180. We haven't killed a 180 on our land for a long time, even though we know they're there just across the street. We see them. I mean, you can drive around, cul-de-sacs and you can see 180 class deer. And, it gets frustrating. Then all of a sudden I killed a 135 and somebody else killed a 160 a couple of years ago. So we're seeing larger class deer simply because they're not getting killed and they're looking for does, because we hold a lot of does just because one parcel has been, was timbered probably 10 years ago. So that's a jungle. We don't go in there. We have our own sanctuary. Then our neighbor, he cut down his whole ridge and timbered it for profit. And so, there's plenty of cover. So we got food, cover, and we got a huge lake, and we got plenty of springs on the farm. So it's a great situation to have, but we're just not seeing the big deer because they just stay in the sanctuary.
And that's sometimes the problems that no matter what you do, you can do the best you can. It's just beyond overcoming. I live in a low density neighborhood here in Clark County, Athens, Georgia. It's an older neighborhood. There are deer in my backyard. If it weren't for my wife, I could tag out off my back porch. But I have a small 50, 60 acre hunting property that adjoins this neighborhood. And it also adjoins a very large county park where no hunting is allowed. And I still have a tough time, although I'll see these on trail camera, in the late summer, early fall. And I still have a tough time connecting with them. The truly, the handful of really nice, mature 130 class and even bigger in some cases, the whitetails that I know are crossing and coming and back and forth to my property because, I don't have food plots. I don't have, we can't hunt over bait in this part of Georgia. That's a whole other argument among Georgia hunters for another day. But if it were legal for me to hunt over a food source, being bait or a feeder, in this one particular situation I would be much more successful because I could pull those animals to a food source off of that huge, large, as you call it, sanctuary, i.e. a place where there's no hunting and deer are getting older and feel safe and protected. You have to really look at a property the way I described it. As I started at 30,000 feet. I look at the distribution of food sources, of habitat, of timber, of water. I look at what's around it in regards to those same features. And as best as I can, try to determine what kind of hunting is going on around that property and how that affects what I'm trying to do. And then I drill down to 1,000 feet and I start looking much more closely, then boots on the ground. And that starts to paint the puzzle, put the pieces of the puzzle on the table. And then you take those pieces of that puzzle and you put them together to create the best case scenario for that property. Again, it is wildly wide distribution of the property type, the landowner type, the legal parameters in that particular part of the state or that state itself, the climate, the moisture, the soil types. I mean, it's a huge bag of variables that's full of all these pieces of the puzzle you have to pull from. But again, I'd like to give you the magic answer to your question, but I really need to see the property, know a lot more. So, hey, when we get off here, let's talk about that.
I'm laughing because, I've had a couple of guys I've had on the show, and they said, Bruce, why don't I just come up there and spend a week in the bunkhouse and shoot some of your deer?
Well, Bruce,
that's all good fun.
That would be great and a lot of fun. I'd love to do it. Fortunately, the other blessing that comes with my line of work is a lot of opportunity to hunt some really nice properties. But no, yeah. And I have actually worked with clients without seeing a property. I don't encourage it. It was just it was work for that client at that time. We shared aerial imagery of the property. Google Earth Pro now accessible to anybody. I used to use ArcView, which is a very high-tech GIS mapping system. And as Google Earth Pro got better and better and better, I left ArcView, and that's what I used. I used it to literally lay out client properties. And a lot of guys in my business, in the professional land, forestry, wildlife business, might laugh at that a little bit because ArcView is considered the professional option. But it's a very effective tool, and I can communicate with people via email. phone conversations, looking at, aerial imagery on a shared computer screen, and we can understand a lot about the property, and I can share a lot of.
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draw odds are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. You'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. All in all, if you're hunting out west in 2018, GoHunt.com Insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com.
Of ideas of where to go with it.
Yeah, you mentioned the 30,000 foot level, and all my hunting, no matter where I go, just because of Google Earth, I'm able to pre-scout wherever I'm going. I just have to know basically how big, how many hundred square miles or whatever that we're going to be in. And once you do that, you become familiar and you become a better hunter. And, that's my take on it. Then when you drop it down to whitetail, some of the mapping is going to show you things that you haven't seen before. You've been on the ground and you know it's there, but you don't see how it all fits together. And that's what I like about 30, 40, 50,000 foot view. You go, well, here's how it works. And like, since we're talking about where I hunt, the Barber River runs down through the bottom, then it comes up with the bluffs, and then we have all the agricultural land, and we have, ridges running through it. Then we have this huge sanctuary over here, and our neighbors, we know all our neighbors, and so we know how they hunt. And it used to be brown and down. We used to drive, 20, 30 years ago, we used to 10, 15 guys are driving to 10 guys standing. I mean, that's how we hunted it. And we don't hunt it that way anymore, except for the kids one day after, the Friday after Thanksgiving, we put the kids on the stand, we drive the whole thing, and whatever comes out, they get a chance to kill their first deer. And that's our tradition. But let's get back to the 50,000 foot view. I would say to all our listeners, I don't care what you're hunting, where you're hunting, pre-scout wherever you're doing. If you're traveling multiple states, you can do that, or take a hard look at your own land, and you might be surprised. Your thought, Rand?
No doubt. If you're not using this very available and even free mapping software, GIS, aerial imagery software, you're missing a big picture that's now at our fingertips. Quick story on the hunting side, and then I want to try to get back into more management and nutrition and food products if we can. But using an iPhone and the iPhone map app that comes with the phone, 2 years ago, after never seeing a property, never setting foot on a property, in one afternoon with a climber and a bow, I killed a 128-inch, 4.5-year-old buck. Not real glamorous, but for where we were hunting, it's a really nice top-end buck. And I did that using my aerial imagery. I saw a large hardwood lot with nothing that stuck out to me as an area of concentration for any reason. And we had a bumper acorn crop, so deer were just scattered through that hardwood lot at any time of the morning or evening or at night. I went in with a friend who had hunted there twice, and he was hunting in the hardwood lot. I looked on my phone, and what I identified was a finger of a creek drain. On both sides of it was 10-year-old, 15-year-old plantation pine, which in our part of the world, young plantation pine is a great bedding area. And it led right to this big hardwood lot. And so he said, I'm going here. I said, well, listen, I don't know what I'm getting into. I'm just going to come down here as I'm looking at my phone and see what I find. And sure enough, I found several hot trails using that finger as a travel corridor, lots of scrapes, climbed the tree and killed the buck. He, at that same hunt, 300 yards away, did not see a deer. So, yeah, use aerial imagery, not only for land management, to understand your property better, but for hunting and scouting. It's so easy now to use and free. I would encourage anybody to get into using web apps and phone apps for aerial GIS mapping. And quickly, I guess to try to steer back into more, we can talk hunting all day, as you and I have discussed leading up to this podcast. I want to talk a little bit about nutrition and the importance of nutrition for growing better whitetails, and because particularly we're moving into the spring and summer. And spring and summer is a vital time to be thinking about food plots and what you're going to plant, when you're going to plant it, how you're going to protect it, and all those sort of things. Because as we're all becoming more and more aware of the importance of nutrition and the cycles of the whitetail annual life and nutritional needs and what it's doing when. But bucks are growing antlers, and those are supporting fawns, and it's the growing season. And even now, with all of this knowledge being disseminated about the importance of summer nutrition, I still find many clients that I meet, people that I talk to that contact me for information, still haven't really caught on. I'll tell you a little bit of backstory if I can real quickly. I worked for a company called Tecumseh Wildlife Systems. I'm sure you're probably familiar with them. From 05 to, I think, 09 or 10, somewhere in that window, I was a senior biologist and director of consulting for the company. And it was when we got the TV show started. So I did some of that, the hunting TV for Buster Tecumseh and Tecumseh Whitetail Nation. But when I was introduced to Gary Schwartz and David Morris of the partners of Tecumseh, and on their own right, really pioneers in whitetail nutrition and growing really big whitetails with nutrition, I learned a lot of things from my visit center to South Texas and meeting and talking with those guys. And one of the things that I had always kind of danced around, but that they really drove home, was the importance of high protein forage in the summer. And what they were doing down there was growing a crop called Lab Lab, primarily in a very drought-stricken region in South Texas with only 14 inches of rainfall. And the response from the deer herd there was phenomenal. Anybody that's watched outdoor TV has probably seen, the bucks that they're taking on that show and producing in South Texas. And it worked that certain way in South Texas. What I was able to do was take what I learned from them about the importance of summer nutrition and also how they were able to grow summer crops in such a drought-stricken area to clients across the country. And so I want to talk a little bit about anybody that has the opportunity to plant summer food plots. Now, you're not going to go out and plant a half-acre plot of iron and clay cowpeas and make any difference. You're really not going to go out and plant just a few acres on a average-sized property and make any difference. More likely, they're going to wipe those crops out. But if you can plant larger, if you can plant a 5-acre field or a total of, say, 3%, 5% of your property in summer annual legumes, like one of my favorites, Eagle Seed Forage soybeans. I'm not sponsored, but they just have been a favorite of mine for a long time. Lab available through the Tecumseh and other seed brand companies. Those really high protein summer legumes, forage variety summer legumes, is where you can really make a significant difference in not only holding deer on your property through those summer months, but really providing some great nutrition that can grow better antlers and healthier, bigger bodied deer. I've seen it proven time and time again after taking a lot of that I learned down there to so many clients across the country. And one of those obstacles that we have with summer food plots, most of, especially here in the Southeast, I've worked a lot in the Southeast because I'm from down here, but I've worked all the way up from New York to Montana down to New Mexico. So I've gotten to work with all these different climates and soil types and precipitation, annual precipitation. And anywhere I go, though, one of the biggest problems with growing good summer crops is the deer themselves. They will come in and they will select the most nutritious, the sweetest crop they can find, and they'll eat it first, and they'll eat it till it's gone. And all of these crops, soybeans, these big seeded legumes, are dicotyledons. And not to get too scientific here, but basically the first two leaves out of the ground is where the rest of that plant comes from. And if the deer start hitting that crop, which they will immediately as it emerges, you're just not going to make it. So there's methods of protecting those plots to keep the deer off long enough for those crops to mature and allow them to then have at it. I found that most that I worked with were not very effective. I have not personally had much luck with scent tapes and odors. There's a organic fertilizer called Milorganite that's available, I think, at least in the South, as far as I know. You can spread it out there. It's stinky fertilizer, and it'll keep the deer off. for a week or two if you get some rainfall. Electric fencing, it gets more costly as you go up in these different options, but it has its limitations as well. I've had people call me and say they put up electric fence around their big food plot, and finally one old doe just decided to blow through it, and that was it. All the deer went in, and also if it's a drought situation, the grounding of the charge can go down, and you can lose the ability to keep the deer out. It's also a little bit tough to handle and manage and keep all those ribbons wrapped up and put them out the next year. They get tied in knots, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, electric fencing can be effective, but it has limitations. I took what I learned in South Texas with reversible high fencing, which is basically what a lot of those ranches are doing now, based a lot on what those guys kind of pioneered, was to plant these summer crops that are very drought tolerant, like lab, and put a fence around them, a metal high deer fence. And it's called reversible because the bottom 36 inches or so is independent. So I can keep those deer out of there during that critical growing early stage of the first 3 to 6 weeks while those plants are becoming more drought tolerant and maturing. And when I'm ready, I lift the fence and I let the deer under it. So it's pretty common sense, but very little is known about this whole system of food plot protection. Because, so few of us deer hunters get to hunt down in South Texas and work with this type of management strategy. But I wanted to take that system to a broader, into more states, into more clients. And so I did some research. I developed a system called Plot Defense. It is a polypropylene deer fencing material. It's 7.5 feet tall. You can erect it with T-posts and zip ties and ground stakes. And I have found it to be 100% effective at keeping the deer out. When I want the deer in, I pull the ground stakes and I roll the bottom of the fence up to the top and zip tie it again, and there they go. This is a system that I'm associated with. I did develop it, but it's available through a company called Tree Protection Supply. And if we get a chance, I'll get out some of that information later. But I did a test plot at the QDMA headquarters here in Athens, Georgia, a few years ago. And they've got 3 small plots, half acre. Largest one they've got is maybe 3/4 of an acre. It's an urban deer herd. It's surrounded by a lot of woodlands and development, very little hunting, high deer density, nothing to eat in the summer months especially. And I put the plot defense on 2 of these plots, and we grew lab, iron and clay cowpeas, sunflowers, crops that are really susceptible to deer damage, head tall by the end of the summer. Not a single deer got in, and at the end of the summer, the QDMA guys who get to hunt over those plots in the fall rolled the fence up and tagged a good many deer. So I just want to touch on that. You can talk soil. It's very important. Seed type, planting, fighting drought, which is becoming so much more common in all parts of the country here in the summer months. But if you do all those things right and you don't pay any attention to what the deer might do themselves, you can still lose that crop. And the other thing to consider is drought and weeds and other problems that come with farming food plots in the summer are only compounded by deer drought, because the plants have less foliage to create photosynthesis and feed themselves and grow, and so it's a real problem I found with a lot of people who understand the importance of summer nutrition, but just have a real tough time successfully growing summer annual crops, in the South and Midwest.
Let's take a moment. How do people get in touch with you?
I'll give you my email. It is rthomaslandwildlife@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook at I've got a business page, Rand's Thomas Land and Wildlife, and that is my business page for my consulting service. I do have a blessing and a curse. The blessing is I am actually so busy with client work that I'm not having a lot of time to populate my website or interact with social media. I enjoy that, so that's the curse. The blessing is I'm very busy, but I do have a website that's not very populated, so don't expect much. But it is Rand's Thomas Land. I should have this up in front of me. I apologize. Well, I tell you what, best way is to search my name on Google. I didn't realize until not long ago. There's a lot over the years of outdoor TV and writing articles and social media. There's a lot of stuff out there. So that'd be the best ways I'd tell you to find me. Find me on Facebook. Use my email, and stay tuned. You can find links to my website. Hopefully, I'll get some time over the summer, which things do tend to slow down for me come hunting season because all my clients are hunting, which is good for me also. I get to go hunt.
And folks, on Facebook, it's Rance Thomas, and he's there with a gaggle of geese. No, that's a pretty nice morning's hunt on duck. So Rance Thomas, Facebook, you can find him there.
Yeah, Rance Thomas, Land and Wildlife. That's my business page. If you hit me up on my personal page, I may not understand you're trying to find me for wildlife. So,
so let's talk about QDMA. I know your brother Lindsey Thomas works over there, and they're also located in the same city you are. So let's talk about that and give some background about the importance of QDMA.
I can't say enough. I have been involved with that organization since 05, 04, 05, 06. My brother Lindsey has had a mostly managing editor role with the magazine. I think he's communications director now. He's been with them for 10 years or more. And in 2009, they were gracious enough to honor me with the Owl Brothers Professional Deer Manager of the Year award, based on a lot of the work that I was doing and also advocating for QDMA. All of the guys and girls involved with that organization are like family, and I always try to make their national conventions pay for us deer nuts that not only want to just know the best way to kill a deer, but want to understand the animal, understand the management, the life cycles, the newest findings and research from the academic world. This is it. Excellent publication and a great website. Some of the interactions I've had with them over the years, and it crossed over into my consulting business. One of my clients here in Georgia, a large property, I saw an opportunity to introduce them to QDMA and to potentially host their national youth hunt, and that actually happened. It has been going on for quite a few years now. They host 10 or 15 youth hunters who don't have an opportunity to hunt across the country at this particular property who were clients and are still good friends of mine.
And thanks for that. And I think about Kip Adams and Lindsey and some of the other people down there. If you're not a member of QDMA, I'm just going to say it this way: shame on you, because they do a tremendous amount of research, and their annual report on whitetails is I could say seminal or iconic, but you won't find better information about what's happening to the whitetail world than what QDMA puts out. No question.
No question. Yes. Get in touch with their branch manager and find out what branch is located closest to you, and get involved, personally with these branch events. They have a deer school for those that want to go through an outdoor program and listen to experts talk about deer management. And I think if you're, like I say, want to know more than just how to shoot a deer and take a deer down, this is a great organization for you.
Let's go back to the food plots, and I know the food plot season is upon us in various places in the country. I was just talking to my friend about how we're going to put clover on the logging trails this year up at the farm. But you shared with me advanced warm season food plot strategies. Let's unpack that a while and tell people why that's important.
I get back to, again, just the overall importance of summer food plots and summer nutrition. I call it the soft approach. I think other professionals, other biologists may disagree with my idea on that. But native habitat management is, if you look at it on a per acre cost, yes, it's cheaper, and a lot of people tout that pretty strongly. But the return in my opinion, if you really understand what you can gain from advanced summer food plot nutrition, is not nearly the return that you can get. So, prescribed burning and planting trees, which can take years before they produce any soft or hard mass, which is all great things, but a more longer-term soft management approach, in my opinion. When I go in, and again, fortunate to have some really great clients that want to really push the envelope and think outside of the box. We really push, summer nutrition and summer food plot, as well as the year-round food plot system. Don't misunderstand that there's an importance in year-round nutrition through food plots, as well as native habitat. But the strategies that I've really have come through many, many years of doing this to kind of land on this is where I'm at now, is the right crops. So soybeans aren't just soybeans. You may go down to the co-op and they've got a group 4 or 5 farm type grade soybean. It doesn't produce nearly the protein in the leaf foliage that a group 8, say, forage soybean will produce. And it doesn't grow leaves for nearly as long. It's not nearly as drought tolerant. And so, like I say, understanding a little bit more about all the different variables from seed type to soil quality, browse protection, as we talked about earlier, is what I'll wrap into advanced summer food plot strategies. Again, drought it's become a real problem with guys and girls trying to grow food plots, myself included. We get those spring rains and we're all excited to plant our soybeans or lab or sunflowers, whatever the case may be. If you're an upland game bird guy or girl, and then we plant, and the plants pop out of the ground, and the water stops, and stops for weeks, if not months, and you watch your prized summer crop wither and go away. And there are ways to combat problems with drought, and it would be in how do I conserve soil moisture. So, and I speak more in the South just because it's where I grew up. And you can apply some of these strategies differently in all different regions of the U.S. You have to move things around and tweak it a little bit. But when you are going to plant just a single crop, say I'm just going to plant soybeans here this year or cowpeas, and I'm going to let it do what it's going to do well into the fall and winter. I'm not going to plant a fall crop. Well, that's a way to actually bank soil moisture through the fall and winter by not having a crop there and allowing that soil to sponge up the rainfall and hold it. Things that draw moisture out of soil are plants. Planted plants are weeds. They suck a lot of moisture out of the soil. Also, disking the soil. It's not for everybody. The implements used to no-till farm are expensive, and you have to really be into big-time food plots before it's a justifiable cost. But no-till farming is without a doubt the way to go. You don't have to disc the ground. When you disc the soil, you can lose what is equivalent to an inch of rainfall just by exposing that top 6 inches of soil and it drying out. And so the old farming techniques, and still standard food plot farming techniques, are to till or disc, fertilize and plant, and then let the crop grow and manage the weeds from there. You can really combat losing soil moisture by no-till farming, where you simply go out, you spray your field with glyphosate or a general all-plant killer, and you let that burn and die down, mow it if it's needed, and you use a no-till implement to push that seed into the ground without having to disc. You can use liquid fertilizers or granular in the right strategy, and you've also take out of the whole process the cost and time and fuel. Weed control, I like the concept of organic farming, but it's really, really hard to be successful with organic farming, non-GMO, or plants that aren't tolerant to certain herbicides like Roundup Ready plants. And so a lot of my clients, they're fine with using Roundup Ready products. Personally, I am too, because I'm much more interested in that plant that I planted growing and being healthy and providing my deer nutrition than I am a bunch of weeds. And, to touch on that, you'll hear a lot, I think, in magazine articles and different experts and professionals about the importance of weeds. Well, in my food plot, weeds are not important. Another thing about soil disturbance, and I'll get back to weeds with this, when you go out and till the ground instead of no-till farming in the spring, and depending on what region, that can be May or June, or it could be as early as March or April in the deep south. When you go out and disturb that soil with disking, you are actually promoting noxious weed growth. We have plants down here from the old cotton farming days, like coffee weed and cordilleria and these nut grasses. The seed can last in the soil for 80 years. And all it takes is for you to disturb that seed and scarify it, knock the coating off, and it's going to germinate. And now you're fighting these noxious summer weeds that you wouldn't have nearly had that kind of a crop response from those weeds if you had no-till farm. Advanced strategy, I think, would also lend to some of the new technologies coming out with liquid fertilizers, liquid soil stimulants, or plant growth stimulants. I am, again, I don't have any sponsors, Bruce, so when I tell you something about a product, the good news for anyone listening and my clients is I'm not biased in any way. I'm going to tell you what works for me and what I feel very confident works for everybody, and probably not say much about the other products. But Monty's Plant Food is a good company I've done a lot of work with. They've got some really great foliar intake fertilizers, plant fertilizers. And they're not costly. They're easy to apply if you have a sprayer. I would tell you to add spraying and looking into herbicide management and liquid fertilizer management if you're not currently doing that with your food plot program. A tank sprayer is not expensive. You can run it on a compact tractor or an ATV, and it can do you a world of good at a very low cost. The whole science of liquid products in farming and in food plots, I think, is another area of that advanced strategies in summer food plot management. But that's it. I could take each one of those topics and go back and spend another hour or two on each one. But as quickly as I can wrap it all up for that question, Bruce, that's it.
Thank you for that. And we've got about 5-10 minutes left. And what I want to talk about is something that you shared with me in the beginning. And folks, this is important to Rand. It's his 80 to 80 project. Why don't you give us some background on that and tell us where it's going?
Bruce, thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about this. I am a singer-songwriter. I had an opportunity in around 2002 when I produced my first album to take it to Nashville and give it a shot, or to continue on my path in wildlife management. Obviously, I chose this path, but it's never left me. My love of singing and songwriting. I perform live. I write songs, and recently I was able to produce my new album, which is available on iTunes and Amazon Music, Spotify. The album is called Grit, and you'll hear a lot of words in my songs like farm and tractor and dirt, and it's I grew up with country music and old outlaw country, and so you'll hear a lot of that in my songwriting on that album, but also released as a single for this project is a song called 80 Pounds of Agony. Through the outdoor industry, I was able to work with some organizations that were doing a lot of things with wounded warriors, getting wounded warriors out onto hunting land, getting them outside, getting them shooting bows or shooting guns, and using that as a really a great relief for their problems, suffering with physical injuries, and PTSD, the mental damages of war and the conflicts that they had experienced. And being around those guys and girls, and feeling very, very much proud of our military, and wanting to do something to show my appreciation, and to write a song that showed that as a fat-free civilian, I am trying to understand their great sacrifice. I wrote this song, 80 Pounds of Agony. It's in parentheses 80 for 80 project. If you find it as a single, it's on my album, but again, find it as a single. It's a $1.29 download only on iTunes. For every download, I will donate 80 cents to the Headstrong Project, which you can find them online. They're a wonderful organization, specifically helping our vets that are suffering with PTSD and mental issues. We're all probably becoming more and more aware about the very sad suicide rate among our vets, and I want to see this group and all of us try to get out there and slow that down and stop the bleeding.
Thanks for that. And again, where do they find the album?
Yeah, the single for the donation is only on iTunes, and it's got a different icon than my album Grit. Grit is also available on iTunes. The easiest thing to do is just search my name on iTunes. You'll find the album and this single, 80 Pounds of Agony. I'm also on Reverb Nation, which is a social media music site. It is Reverb Nation /Rands Thomas. And I have a Facebook page called Rands Thomas Country. So you can add that to the list of links we've been laying down here. But you can find me out there. Again, a simple Google search of my name will bring up a lot of my music as well.
That's for sure, Rand. Now, you got a couple minutes to get some shout-outs, and then we're going to wrap the show.
You got it. A shout-out to my partners at Tree Protection Supply. They do provide the plot defense system, and they're based out of Noonan, Georgia. You can find links to the system, videos on how to, and contact them directly if you're interested in purchasing a 1 acre or multiple acre kit of plot defense. Another shout out to a friend and business partner I've had in the business for a long time who helps me provide seed and supplemental deer feed to my clients at discounts, and he gets the good stuff from the source, I will say, is Don Willis at DBW Outdoors, and you can find him online as well at DBW Outdoors. Shout out to QDMA, my brother Lindsay, Kit, Brian, all the guys at the office. When I was doing some work with Cabela's, I was out there a lot more often. I got to see him a lot more often, but haven't in a while. Hope to see him at the convention in New Orleans this July, I believe. You can find that also online at QDMA. And that's probably a wrap, Bruce.
Well, this has been, I'm mesmerized, and when I was bringing up our land above the Bearable River, along the Bearable River, it was just, I'm going, okay, how do I do this? And how do I do that? It was really fun because I'm right on the ground going, well, we did this here and did this there. It was really fun. Rand, it was totally enjoyable. I mean, it really was. You gave me a lot of food for thought.
Well, listen, managing the land, managing the wildlife, it is a package of passion and enthusiasm in its own right. The end game for most of us is to take a big trophy buck. But honestly, the lifestyle, and I've been blessed in having grown up on a farm and still having a family farm to work with personally as our own piece of dirt, but also all of my different clients' properties. If you have land, if your family owns land, or you can get in a lease, whatever the case may be, it is so rewarding to do this, year to year and watch the results of your hard work.
Rand Thomas, on behalf of thousands of listeners across North America, I hope, they did what I did, pencil and paper, and going, oh yeah, I should think about that. And so Creative Land and Wildlife Solutions, www.randthomas, lands and wildlife.com, or at his Gmail account, and just Google him. And like he said, he pops up everywhere. And so, the other thing, folks, I'm going to underscore, smile a bit today. You don't know where he's at. You don't know where her mind is at. And just that one smile, just smile at him. And then you don't know the impact. And every single listener did that. Wherever you are, wherever you're located, I don't care if they're in uniform or out of uniform, and just smile at them, nod your head, give them a wink. That's it. You can make a difference because there is a problem out there, and we're the solution. So think about that. Sir, you want to wrap the show?
Bruce, I'll say thank you very much. It was great talking with you. Maybe we'll circle back in months to come or whenever.
Hey, folks, we got a new sponsor. It's called Buckwild Coffee. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people go to Starbucks every day and drink coffee. Well, why shouldn't Buckwild Coffee offer you light, medium, or dark roast with free shipping? All you have to do is go to whitetailrendezvous.com, go to shop, and order your coffee, and I'll ship it out for free. Hey, thanks so much for visiting Buckwild Coffee. The best brew in the West, the best brew around the campfire, the best brew in the hunting shack, the best brew anywhere. Buckwild Coffee. Get yours today.
And talk on some more land and wildlife topics. And I really appreciate your time.
Listen to the next episode, and you're going to hear from a couple guys from Illinois. Not Pike County, but they're a little further north than that. But they sure got some booner bucks, and he's got a great story on a 170 that I took that you're not going to want to miss. A lot of tips and techniques of how and when to hunt running bucks. The other thing they're going to talk about is involving youth and women in the outdoors. And the best thing that they do is deer management. Great show coming up with Randy Brewer and Stephen Jennings.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.